Assalamu alaikum, dear viewers. Peace and blessings of Allah be upon you. We continue with our special coverage of the annual convention, Jalsa Salana, of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community here in the UK, being held in Hadikatul Mahdi Alton in the United Kingdom. Islam teaches us that we all have two primary duties which one must fulfill throughout our lives. One is the worship of God, and the second is service to the creation of God. This fundamental teaching is stated in the Holy Quran that man should act with justice and beneficence towards mankind. The Ahmadiyya Muslim community is at the forefront of serving mankind through many humanitarian projects set up in Africa and other parts of the world. For those of you who have previously attended Jalsa Salana or have seen previous Jalsa broadcasts, you may know about some of the exhibitions that are held at the Jalsa site annually. Among them are Humanity First and the IAAE. Today, we will speak with the representatives of both organizations and find out about the various services they offer to mankind. I have with me very distinguished personalities. To my immediate right is Fazal Ahmed Sahib. Fazal Ahmed Sahib is the Director of Humanity First, and also have with me in the studio Akram Ahmedi Sahib. He is the Director of the IAAE. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming. Let me start with you, Ahmed Sahib. Briefly, what can you tell us about Humanity First? What is it? What is its purpose?
So Humanity First was started 24 years ago. We're going to be 25 years old next year. It was started through the vision of the fourth Khalifa of the Ahmadiyya community. And the purpose was to serve mankind. So our strapline is serving mankind, but in a sustainable manner. So we started off with disaster response in many countries, and then gradually we turned our attention more to human development. And when I talk about human development, sustainable means rather than people going to, let's say, parts of Africa and installing a water pump and then coming back, or building a school and then coming back, it's sustainable if we do the projects with the host community and teach them how to do onward projects themselves and to maintain the projects. That's how it becomes sustainable. So that's been our focus.
Let me also turn my attention to the IAAE. Who are you? What do you do?
Well, I'm an engineer by trade, and also, as our name suggests, that we are full of architects and engineers. And so one of the questions I would imagine you'd ask is, what are engineers and architects walking around in Africa? In fact, a lot of the projects we do require technical assistance so that we do it the right way. And in that regard, the engineers that we have and the architects that we have, for example, from the architectural side, we want to build buildings which are sustainable in the African environment, in the hot environment. You know, we want to make use of local materials and amenities to make those buildings cool in the summer, for example. Or, you know, we have very hot weather in mostly Africa. And then also regarding the technical expertise, you know, we are doing water wells, as Fazal Saab has mentioned. And for that one, you also need technical expertise. You know, you need architecture engineers to know what sort of ground there is. So if we are going to drill water wells, that we use the right drilling machinery. And so for that, we have, alhamdulillah, over 100, at least almost actually 150 engineers here in Europe who are helping us to provide this humanitarian development in Africa.
So in essence, both organizations are charities, so to speak. But how are these charities, for instance, the Humanity First, how is it different from other charities around the world?
Okay, the first difference is our motivation and our inspiration. So as you mentioned at the beginning of the program, Hukuk al-Ibad, serving the creation of mankind, is in our DNA, not just for us, but for IEEE. So the motivation is to serve. We're not looking for anything back. That's the first thing. Secondly, we get constant inspiration from our Khalifa, who is always advising us to think from the perspective of the people we're trying to help. He said, you should wipe away their tears, you should take their burden from them and take it as your own burden. So this is the inspiration for all of our volunteers, whether IEEE or Humanity First. And in fact, there are many programs where we work together, where, you know, if I can say they're the brains, we're the brawn. But that's how we are different. So in that spirit of serving, what you'll find is that unlike many NGOs, majority of our people, I think it's true to say, are all volunteers. We only employ people who are teaching in our schools, serving in our hospitals, engineers on the ground. But the rest of us, we're all volunteers. And even when we go to operations, many of our people will pay for their own flights, visas, they will stay in local villages, they will eat local food. We spend the minimum on ourselves. We want to send all of the money that we collect on the projects on the ground.
Oh, interesting. Ahmed Saib, so listening to what Ahmed Saib has just said, it means that even engineers who are likely, and that's what we hear in Africa, engineers in Europe and in America earn a lot of money from the work they do. These engineers leave all that behind and go to remote areas in Africa and other places.
Absolutely.
To work without a penny.
Without a penny, not only without a penny, but I can tell you that when they go to Africa and when they work in the villages, they are sleeping rough in the huts that they are there, and they eat the local food. And how we also sort of, I should say perhaps, distinguish ourselves from Humanity First is that in the ultimate analysis, you know, we are doing it for the purpose of pleasing God. So there's no other ulterior motives at all. And what we therefore do is we want to enhance the capabilities of our African brothers, you know, because we want them to stand on their own feet. So what we engineers do in particular is make sure that we transfer knowledge. And so for that, one of the good aspects of this has been the creation of the Masroor International Technical College, which we are going to build in Burkina Faso, which is one of the first ones. And Hazur has agreed that funds sustaining us, that we shall build in every African country a technical college. Now, what the technical college does is ensure that good craftsmanship and good artisans are created in Africa. So these schools, which will eventually, you know, create at least 100 students, teach 100 students in skills like carpentry, mechanics, auto mechanics, and brickwork, things like that, you know, and so that they become good artisans, you know, and therefore that will be a much more sustainable effort in that way, so that we have also good electricians, and we don't have to get people all the way from Europe to do this side of very basic work. But once we teach the local people how to do this, then the projects will begin to be implemented by them.
Right, and that brings me to my next question, Fazil Saib. There's one thing talking about what you do, and another thing talking about whether what you do really has any impact on the people. Right. Tell us about it.
Let me give you an example. So 5 years ago, West Africa was struggling with the Ebola crisis. Right? Some of the only medical clinics that were running were from Nusrat Jahan and from Humanity First. For example, in Bamako, in Mali, in Monrovia, and so on. That was the first thing. Sustainable is not just about training, it's about creating a mindset in Africa that we can do things for ourselves. We don't need to wait for someone to come from USA or UK. So when the Ebola crisis was going on, I couldn't visit my teams. There was an embargo on travel. So Siddiqui Sanko was our chairman of Humanity First in Sierra Leone. I was having daily video calls with him. I asked him, what else can we do? And he spoke to the Ministry of Transport, and his team came up with the ideas. They said, look, we need to be using thermometers and testing passengers before they go on public transport buses around Western, the Freetown area. They came up with a plan. We supported them. We funded it. Then they were doing sensorization.
Right.
And after that, after Ebola subsided, we built toilets.
I'll come back to you, but even as we speak about Humanity First, cameras with Kalim Saib has arrived at the Humanity First stand, where currently he is with the marketing director of Humanity First at that exhibition center. I see you, Kalim. What's going on there?
Yes, Abdullah Saab, assalamu alaikum. I'm in the main marquee for Humanity First, where there is an exhibition about the operations of Humanity First throughout the world. And Najm Khan Saab, you're the director for marketing for HF UK. Tell us a bit more about the exhibition that we have here.
So the exhibition this year is based around a few different types of projects that we're doing. The key one really that we're trying to highlight to everybody is the hospital that we're trying to build in the Ivory Coast. It's a hospital which is much needed in an area where there's nothing of its type. It's going to focus on maternity and pediatrics to start off with, and it's a gradual thing, inshallah. It'll have more and more facilities, state-of-the-art facilities in years to come. So this is a big project for us. We're fundraising for it. We need to raise a lot of money to do this project. But inshallah, when it's done, it'll be something very special in that area as well.
I understand already Humanity First has already erected a huge hospital in Guatemala, Nasser Hospital, yes, which is a great model for Ivory Coast to follow.
Well, it is really a model, and it's something that we want to try to replicate in Ivory Coast. That has got state-of-the-art facilities. It's a groundbreaking thing, especially for something in that area. So it's not just about building hospitals, it's about building hospitals and giving relief to people in places where they don't have it. So that's really key for us.
So alongside these big projects, there's also small projects. We also see behind us the Classroom Transformation Project, where classrooms are transformed to benefit students. Tell us a bit more about that project.
So some schools in sub-Saharan Africa are very ill-maintained. And literally they're just shacks or just buildings with chairs and tables just about. So we went in there with the mentality to go and refresh the whole idea and invigorate the classroom by very simple things like painting, by drawing, there's drawings all over it, and making it a much nicer atmosphere aesthetically to be. And that's resulted in a lot more children attending school. That's resulted in people enjoying schools more. There's more engagement in their education. You think it's a small thing, but our team will go out there and paint these schools and make them look a lot better, and the children want to go to school now.
It's amazing, because I remember I went to Uganda and there was a school that had been transformed, and the head teacher there told me that the children that were attending the school actually came back to her and said, can we go a few classes back to spend a bit more time in the school, because they were enjoying the school experience much more.
Yeah, I mean, attendance levels will increase as a result of that. And, the children, the least that you can give to a child is an education, right? So that's what we're trying to do there.
Okay, so let's go back to Abdullah in the studios and continue with the program.
But Kalim, I'm more interested also in seeing actual pictures from some of these areas you've talked about. In the studio we have Fazil Saib. He's talked about the activities of Humanity First in Sierra Leone. We've heard about you talking about Uganda and the educational facilities in Uganda. Can you show us around some more? What is there for us to see at the exhibition hall?
Itself. We've actually got the healthcare services as well. Najm Sab, can you tell us a bit more in terms of what else is there to see?
Healthcare services are the organisation that will do the hospitals and stuff for us, right? So, but within global health as a program, there's many other things. For example, gift of sight is a major thing for us as well. So we're trying to give people the gift of sight, literally again, whereby they're having cataract operations. It's a very nominal fee for us to supply someone like that for only £50. We fundraise for that regularly. And literally, you're giving someone their eyesight back. You're giving, who won't have access to it. And they're very simple operations we take for granted over here in the UK. But over there, our people, our surgeons go. We train other surgeons to go and are able to, do these things independently of us as well. But we have teams that go, even from the NHS here, that will have volunteers that will partner with us and go over there and do these operations and serve the communities in Africa specifically as well.
And I understand only recently the president of Gambia visited one of our dental hospitals in Gambia.
Yeah, there's the more these projects happen, the more the local dignitaries and national dignitaries, like I said, the president will come and visit us and see these facilities. And they inform you of their appreciation of the work that Humanity First does. And because it's related to Jamaat Ahmadiyya, it goes a long, long way.
So I hope, Abdullah Saab, that's explaining a little bit more in terms of what's happening here in the exhibition. We take it back to yourself.
Kalim Saib, Jazakallah, many thanks for bringing us updates from the Exhibition Center of Humanity First. Just before we go, I'll return to you shortly, but Akram Saib, tell me about the IAAE and your activities. You've talked about the interventions there, but eventually when you leave, the people would have to take care of themselves. Instead of teaching them, giving them fish, do you also teach them how to fish?
Absolutely. This is the hallmark of our work as donors, and that people in Africa should stand up on their feet, you know. And in that regard, what we have done, you know, I mentioned to you that, I don't know whether I mentioned, but we've actually done 3,000 water wells in Africa. And to do that, it's actually our African brothers who have done the work. We have just overseen it. But as they've done the work, we've given them the techniques of how to fish, as you say, you know, and therefore it is sustainable now. Not only that, I think I mentioned the Masroor International Technical College, which is going to raise a lot of local expertise, and they will be able to do the work themselves rather than us coming there all the time. So alhamdulillah, I think I would say that we are on a very good wicket at the moment, the way we are going, that inshallah it will be sustainable work that we are doing. It's not a pump breaks and that's the end of the story and no one knows what to do after that. This is what is wrong with the major donor agencies, even like the World Bank and United Nations, is that they have not left this infrastructure behind. But this is what we as religious organizations look into, to make sure that what we leave behind is sustainable by the people themselves.
Unfortunately, we ran out of time, but a quick question before we bring down the curtains now. So why is Humanity First and also IAAE into all of this in order to win souls for Ahmadiyyat, so to speak?
No, part of our faith is to serve mankind. So whether or not someone thanks us, appreciates us, wants to do anything with us, we're there to serve. And, you know, as Akram Saab was explaining, the sustainability angle is very important. So where we're building hospitals across Africa, there are insufficient doctors, nurses, surgeons. So we're training them, and these will become an asset, whether or not they carry on serving in a Humanity First hospital or a government hospital. We're there to serve the community.
Ultimately, the only reason is to please God.
Yeah.
That's it.
All right, what a wonderful discussion we've had. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming.